Welcome to the Bread and Thorns podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bread and Thorns podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we sit down and discuss literature, art, media, and other stuff we really like and how they influence the projects that we're working on. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Rosemary.
And today we're going to discuss The Lord of the Rings. That's right.
Yeah.
We are still doing The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
We are on our third and last episode for it. So for those of you who have not been keeping up with us, this is your first podcast. Let me recommend our other podcasts that we've done already so far. So far in this series, we've been talking about movies that Rosemary and I really like.
Yep.
And how they influence the projects that we're... No, I'm kidding.
Exactly.
But it's basically our top 10 movies
Yes.
of all time. And Rosemary and I have been doing a countdown. Not really a countdown from 10 to 2, but we kind of did it randomly.
Yeah.
But then we decided, hey, we're going to have our number ones be the last one. So this is... Lord of the Rings is our last one.
Yeah.
Or our first
number
one.
It's our
right?
first.
Last shall be first,
yes,
first shall be last, right?
Literally what I was thinking
So
of. Cool. Yeah.
It is the first film for both of us that we love very much.
Yeah.
And we consider, or at least I consider, The Lord of the Rings to be one film. All three of Peter Jackson's trilogy is one film. And then I was able to convince Rosemary of that same line and idea.
To be fair, J.R.R. Tolkien convinced me. You just led me to the
You spoke
understanding
with Professor Tolkien.
that he intended the three books to be one book.
You've spoken with Professor Tolkien. That's very impressive.
I know,
So
right? I commune with the
this
dead.
entire time, he's not dead.
Isn't he dead?
He's Catholic. He's alive.
He is eternally alive. He is currently physically dead.
No, he's alive. He's more alive than we are, apparently. I mean, that's not
Depending on your
totally
version
true.
of life, yeah.
So, yeah, apparently Rosemary's spoken with Professor Tolkien.
Yes.
I thought it was going to
On
be like
his authority.
I thought it was going to be like a thing where she just tells us that, I don't know,
What? That he's beautiful.
that she's actually super old. She's like a vampire.
Oh,
and
I
she's
wish. I have genuinely wished for like immortality like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Just continuing?
Yeah.
Seems boring. Seems Gollumish.
Maybe. But I guess like I could also just like go stare at a sunset for 3 days and not die. Just like go stay at like the perfect sunset spot and just stay there for 3 days.
I think you'd still be hungry.
Yeah, but I'd get over it. Like right
But
now,
then that's
if I
everything.
like. But if
You
Steven,
can do it now.
right now, if I
Like if you fast for 3 days,
I know, I
generally
won't
the
really be
hunger goes
hungry,
away
yeah.
at the end of 3 days.
But I don't have a single. That's not entirely true. I probably have like one or two people that'd be like, "You can do that. That's healthy." But yeah, I don't know. I liked the idea, and it was the thought process of like no one would have to watch me die, like no one else would have to experience my death. Like I could live
mean-
experiencing other people's death, so that way no one experiences mine. That was a fun thought process.
So typically, like if you grow to an old age and you die because of that old age, so that's usually like heart failure or whatever. A lot of, at least in my experience, but also just knowing people whose family members have passed away peacefully, like it's very interesting because when you die, typically in that fashion, right? Oh, the not story, but the kind of the idea is that a lot of old people just tend to not want to be here anymore.
Yeah, they just don't want to be old anymore.
Right. And so what happens a lot of times is that when you're old, like you get sick and then you get better and then you just leave.
Die.
Right.
Oh.
And it's really interesting because it's like it's a trend that happens. It happened in my family. It's happened in many people's family where it's not really about the heart failure. It's not really about the whatever condition your body's in. It's just like I'm kind of tired and I want to go home, right?
Aww.
And
Okay.
then people just pass on, and
Yeah.
so you could just do that, right? But in a woods
Maybe.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and not with other people. Then you'll have your dream.
But I'd have to wait until everyone I know is dead
You don't have to.
for them to like
You just go off
not
in a
try to
forest somewhere,
find me or something.
like Henry David Thoreau, and then just
Ah,
be there, existing as a
see,
hermit.
He's just
reading The Lord of the
uncomfortable.
Rings.
That could be fun.
That could be fun.
That could be.
And
fun.
all of his stuff, right? So you bring the history of Middle Earth, you bring The Hobbit, you bring The Lord of the Rings.
I might be able to read all of it before I die.
That's the goal. right? Every time the Tolkien family or Tolkien estate publishes a new thing, you just have it automatically sent to your place.
Yes.
And then you just do podcasts.
That's what the tracking chip is for. Just for delivery of
That's what
anything related to Lord of the Rings.
Beast is for.
Yes. So that way we can like fully inject our Lord of the Rings addictions.
All right. Well, for the getting back to our main topic.
Yeah.
So we've been doing Lord of the Rings, and to honor the fact that there are 3 parts in the books and then 3 parts in the movie trilogies, we also done 3 parts for this podcast for the Lord of the Rings. And so our first one we did story, our second one we did characters, and in this last one we're going to do themes. We're going to do themes, and we're pretty excited about it. I think we're pretty happy with how the other 2 turned out, though.
Yeah, especially the character one, but both of them I like them.
Yeah, for those of you who sat through characters, we thank you.
Yes.
Because that was 2 hours.
That was like 2:10.
And no, it was way longer than that. I think it was like 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours 30 or something like that. So 2.5 hours of us talking about characters.
Talk about like wanting to just pass on.
I'm just hopefully our listeners are not in that state yet. After this, maybe no, I'm kidding. All right, but we do thank you guys for listening to us, especially me. I have to go back through and listen to all of them, and just I'm very thankful because hearing my voice, to me at least, is a little bit grating. That's actually part of the reason this podcast is great, is because I don't have to just hear my voice. Rosemary's voice is much more comforting and soothing than mine.
Blah, blah, blah.
Except when she does that. She's never done that.
I have never done that. I can do more if you like.
So we thank you guys for listening to us as we were talking about story and characters, but now we are going into themes.
Woo!
And just like the other podcasts, we're going to do a little bit of a difference than we did with our other episodes. We're going to break this down a little bit more. Both Rosemary and I have prepared something a little bit special. Basically, we have 3 themes that we really want to go through. And Rosemary is going to share hers first.
Weep.
And then we're going to share one that we kind of came up with together.
Weep,
and
weep.
then I'm going to share mine. But before we get to that, something that I wasn't able to do with the story episode because... just because it just went a little bit long and I didn't feel like it fit there at that point at the end of our conversation. But I feel like going through kind of the 3 parts and just kind of see where the themes of each part kind of interconnect and fit in. And so the first movie, of course, we're doing the films, not the books.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really important to
distinguish.
Yeah, and so if you haven't seen the movies, it's been a long time. It's been COVID. We've had to shut down.
It is actually one of those things that if you have like an impressive amount of time, you should watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy just because it's like 21 hours. No, it's not. That's the whole thing. That's including The Hobbit. But like it's 11.2 hours for the extended edition, like just the first 3.
We went over that and we found that out.
So for you to like not do that, to be fair,
we don't look down on you.
Like
Rosemary looks down on you.
I'm confused
I'm just
and
kidding.
maybe a little concerned. Like if you've been watching like Netflix and all the other things like nonstop.
It is on Netflix.
And it's on HBO Max. They have the extended editions.
On HBO Max?
Yeah.
Okay. If I remember, the Netflix versions are not extended.
No, they're the theatrical ones.
Right. And so for first-time viewers, I always recommend the theatrical versions first, just because it's longer. But for the most part, once you finish those, then it's like, oh man, I kind of want to revisit it, and I go, there's the extended versions, right? And you go in, and it's kind of a new experience because, especially in the beginning of the Fellowship, like Bilbo's whole monologue isn't in the theatrical version, right? And so you get introduced to this, and you're like, oh, it's kind of like a whole new movie, everything. At least that's how I think of it. That's how I think of it.
I feel like I tend to show Lord of the Rings to people that I want to be my friends. And if you can't sit through the extended edition, you're not going to want to spend time with me. Because, like, it's extended.
I remember we were working in a music store together, right? And there was one of the other store associates was talking about how he didn't like to watch The Lord of the Rings. And we were shocked because we were like, what? This is such a great series, blah, 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 blah. And then he was like, well, it's not that I don't like The Lord of the Rings. It's that the people who gather around these movies are so fanatical about it that every single time they want to watch it, it's always the extended movies. It's always the marathon. And I just don't feel like dedicating my time to it.
That makes... I remember that conversation. I forgot about that conversation. Okay.
I mean, I'm still friends with the guy, but, you know, maybe Rosemary's
I
not.
talk to him every once in a while. But,
Every once in a while.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of people every once in a while. It's not a...
But he's not a friend. So that's what you're saying basically right now.
I redid my definition of friend. So when I say friend, I usually mean like close friend. And
you mean people who would watch the Lord of the Rings extended version?
Yes. Actually, there is one exception to that. I have one friend, one of my best friends, who's like, she likes him, but she's not gonna sit through that with me. No,
you have to offer
there's not
her,
enough romance and drama in it.
You have to offer her this. No, you should have her pay attention. Anyways, so we talked about Aragorn last time. We're not going to talk about them this time. But you should have her pay attention to him. Anyways, but you should give her something that's like, you know, like ice cream.
Just constantly give her coffee throughout the entire movie,
and then just
have to pause it during the bathroom breaks.
It's the carrot, right? It's the carrot for the journey.
All right, yeah. I will give you a extended edition free coffee pass. I will get you as much coffee as you can have in 11.2 hours.
I think she'd be going to the restroom a lot, though.
That's what I said. So it would be like 14
so
hours.
You need to get a catheter at that point. Have you heard of stadium pants?
Oh, you're scaring me now.
No. So this is a real thing.
Oh no.
Stadium pants were invented by people who really love football games, American football games, right? Either that, I'm pretty sure it's not soccer. I'm pretty sure it's American football, but soccer's just as long, right? Or even longer sometimes, right? It's 90 minutes or something like that. Yeah. So, but American football has those breaks with those commercials and all this kind of stuff. So the entire thing is like really, really long. So what these people did was they invented this pair of pants that you can wear that basically has a catheter and then massive pockets in the pant legs. And so you never have to go to the restroom. And as a bonus, your legs are kept warm. And so I think that's what you can offer to your friend. She's laughing, I don't know, mirthlessly, but a little bit. She's trying to keep in the mirth right now. But you can offer your friend the pants.
I don't know.
And they'll be able to sit through, drink coffee, and just keep going.
I'm just like, wow.
Because sometimes you're just such a fan, right?
Words
like those Steelers
fail.
Fans that riot all the time, whether they win or lose.
Words fail when stadium pants don't.
Stadium pants will just be there for you. Anyways,
like, the ingenuity is amazing, but also like
that will tie a lot to our industry versus nature theme that we're going to do later.
Okay.
Or maybe a combination of industry and nature.
Well, this is a perfect segue to my theme, which is...
Well, hold on before we do that, because we're going to go through the story of each of them.
Oh, right. Okay, yes.
Of each of the parts. And so do you have kind of... A lot of people that I ask... Oh, wait, we went over this with you. Your favorite is the Two Towers, right? That's the one that I've seen the most. And a lot of people really like the Fellowship of the Ring.
It's amazing.
Because that's the one that kind of introduces the characters and everything. And so as I was watching this time, I realized... And
Boromir dies.
Well, I'm not sure if that's why people like it.
It's a magnificent death.
It's like a... Right, yeah. It's a great ending. His whole Sean Bean did really well. when he gets shot with those 3 arrows, it's the best.
Like he always dies.
That I
so
like
get
shot
you
with
know
3
that
arrows,
he's gonna die.
It's a good death scene.
Yeah.
Very heroic.
It's very heroic.
Very sacrificial, which I appreciate.
Still tragic though, because he doesn't even manage to really save them.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the tragedy of his death, right? It was kind of needless. Right. And so, which is one of the themes that Tolkien has with his books. Anyways, but the story of the Fellowship, or I realized as I was watching this time through, that these, even within the framework of the movie, and I'm sure this exists for all movies, but it made me realize at this time as I was watching it through, that each movie really has kind of these themes that they were trying to show the audience that helped you go on the spiritual journey that is in the Lord of the Rings, right? And so the first one that I found was that the story of the Fellowship of the Ring is not just, Frodo gets the ring, he goes to Council of Elrond, and then he gets it to the mountains of Immoil, and then that's it, right? That's the plot, right? But the story of it, when you follow it along, is the realization of what the ring is. Yeah. And how none of these characters, and all these characters are, they span a lot of different characterizations, right? There are a lot of different personalities, a lot of different traits. There's almost always someone that you can relate to, if not everybody, in the Fellowship.
Yeah.
Right? And so
fair.
No, you don't agree? Or
I said fair.
Okay, so, sorry. I heard something else. I don't know what. And so...
How dare you, Isaac?
I know. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
It was late and I was tired. So
the realization of the ring and then the relatability of the characters.
The realization that these characters, none of them can bear the burden of the ring. Right? No matter if it's Frodo, no matter if it's Sam, no matter if it's Aragorn, no matter if it's Gandalf, everybody, none of these people can actually bear the weight of the ring. And of course, one of the motifs of the ring is the fact that it's sin, right? It represents sin, but that sin triggers a different desire in all of us, right? And so for the hobbits. One of the reasons, at least this is my theorization. I'm pretty sure it's correct, but it's my theory.
99% sure.
99.9999% sure.
Okay.
And then I find their letter in like Tolkien was said that's wrong. So I'm just kidding.
He's like, Isaac, I see into the future. I see into your soul. You are incorrect.
How dare you, child, destroy my...
Pretend like you know my stories.
Like you know everything. At this point, though, it's a literal...
And you would just be fangirling because you have like, I have a letter from Tolkien.
Right.
I
don't care what it says about me.
This is for me.
This is a letter from Tolkien. I'm going to frame this. I'm going to post it up.
I just watched the Big Bang Theory. Well, the end of the Big Bang Theory where he gets to see Stan Lee and he...
Wait, the Big Bang Theory ends?
Big Bang Theory, no. The Big Bang Theory, okay, the TV show. Penny brings...
I know the TV show, but I didn't know it ended.
What's his face? It's not Leonard, it's the other one. Oh,
Sheldon.
Sheldon, thank you. Brings Sheldon to Stan Lee's house, and he's like, "That's Stan Lee's doorbell. This is Stan Lee's house. This is Stan Lee's door. Oh my God, I'm gonna watch." And then Stan Lee calls the cops on him, and he treasures the police report because it was a police report. It was I believe signed, and the statement is from Stan Lee.
Right.
And so he's really happy he got arrested by Stan Lee on Stan Lee's property.
So did the Big Bang Theory end?
I don't know. Probably. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't. I followed it until like season 9 or 8 or something like that.
I haven't even watched all of that.
Okay. So
I've been like, it's that one of the shows that's just on when I go to people's houses, or it's just on in like random restaurants and other places.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of it.
Right.
But none of it in like order. So
well, let's come back to something better.
Yeah. Anyway, but that was just like the whole like it's Tolkien. If like Tolkien just was like, "Hey, Isaac, you suck," you'd be like, "Tolkien, talk to me." Like, it's just,
yeah,
it's just fun.
So one of the things about the Hobbits is that and one of the portrayals of the Hobbits is that one of the main portrayal of Hobbits is that they are very little folk.
They're sneaky.
They're sneaky.
Snakes.
And they like to be hidden. Right? They don't like to go out on adventures. Yep. They don't like to do the big bombastic kind of stuff. They don't want to be the heroes. They just want to hide. And so what the ring does when they put it on is make them disappear. Invisible. Right? And so the ring in a sense is this thing that kind of fulfills this desire that you have, right, in a certain way, right? But in that way, in a sinful way, not in Tolkien's world, in a power hungry way, rather than having your desires fulfilled properly, right? And so the ring then is that thing, and the Fellowship of the Ring is all about these characters, especially the movie. The book as well, but we're just concentrated on the movies. But the movies really show the danger of the ring and why it needs to be destroyed. Yeah. Because none of these people, no character, no personality, is able to be safe with the ring. Like Gandalf, very, very wisely, does not even dare to touch it. Right.
Except the once.
I don't know if he touched it that time.
You just think he got close?
I think he got close, and then he saw the ring Sauron
The
it's kind of like
hair on the tip of his finger, like a little Spider-Man.
I don't even think it's that.
Thing,
it's
just like
because you remember when Gandalf puts the cloth back on the Palantir, right? He sees the Eye of Sauron
You are
too.
correct.
So he doesn't touch the Palantir. He just gets really, really close, right? And I think the ring is like that.
You're touching something that's touching something.
Right.
It's still touching something.
But you're not touching it.
That's sibling mentality.
Exactly.
It's still touching.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. So yeah. So and Gandalf has that proper fear, right? Don't tempt me, Frodo. Right. That was his line. Don't tempt me. Right. What was that line where he says,
to Bilbo?
No.
Or
He
just
says
to
it to Frodo as he's basically trying to not touch the ring. It's not be. He says to Frodo, don't tempt me. When I first watched it, I thought it was don't tempt me
like
further.
I would take the ring out of a desire to do good,
right?
but through me,
yeah.
the ring would wield something far more evil or something like that.
But through me, the ring would wield a power too terrible to imagine.
Yeah.
I think that's the line, right? And so that's.
And then you got Galadriel's little
right.
Bamf.
And that's such a great through line. Like Frodo's trying to get rid of this thing.
He's like, please take it. Please take it from me.
He's the one guy that's always trying to get rid of it, right? And he's offered it Gandalf, and then he's offered it to Galadriel. Galadriel is the one that shows him what it would look like if someone, like even wise, would take it. Right?
It doesn't matter if you're wise or not. The wise will not take it.
Yeah. And his realization of, oh man. So even the person who
that means Denethor is powerful but not wise because he's a dumb person.
Well, I wouldn't say he's dumb. I would say he's in despair.
I think that he's extremely intelligent and he is not wise.
Right. So there's a difference between wisdom and... I mean, he accuses Gandalf of not having wisdom, right? It's like, for all your wisdom, you lack... For all your subtleties, you lack wisdom. Yeah. And then you see Ian McKellen's face. He's like, what? It's one of the greatest shots ever. Yeah. So that's kind of the story of the Fellowship, right?
Okay.
And then the well,
and it's also like the whole like friendship shall triumph. Like there's still hope at the end of the movie. Like you have Sam is with Frodo and he's like and Frodo's all like, we're never gonna go home, and he's like, we may yet, Mr. Frodo. So you have like that little hope. And
I wouldn't say
like,
friendship shall triumph. I would say friendship helps to push you through.
Yeah,
right?
And then you have Aragorn who's like, we will not abandon Merry and Pippin to their fate. Like it's this whole thing, and so it's something where like you have both little groups that are like
right, but that last part is the breaking of the Fellowship, right? And so it's not you don't have the triumph yet.
No, but it's like in the brokenness there is still hope,
right?
Versus hope. In like Two Towers,
the hope
it's like
of friendship.
Hope gets crushed a couple times in Two Towers,
quite a few times.
Yeah,
and I think that is the theme of the Two Towers, right? In a sense, where you have it's kind of a walking into darkness. If that makes sense. It's almost platonic in a way. Like you have that descent into darkness from Fellowship into Two Towers. Yeah. And in Two Towers, in Fellowship, the ending of it is a kind of the journey of isolation. And that friendship that pushes you through, but we don't see the triumph of that friendship yet, right? And so it's
we
really
don't see that until
going
Return of the King. You don't really
isolation.
see any of that in Two Towers, actually.
Yeah,
because even in Two Towers, like they keep crushing the hope and then giving you back the crushed hope, and then they crush it again even further, and then they give you back the little tiny shards that are there. And then it's kind of gone, and then it's kind of like resurrected again,
right.
and then you have the next movie.
Yeah, right. Then you have the next one.
There's not really, because like I'm trying to think. I'm like the most hopeful parts are like when Aragorn's not dead.
When Sam gives his speech.
And then when Gandalf comes back with the Rohirrim at the end of the movie.
So
that's pretty much it.
I think the central thesis of the Two Towers in continuing from Fellowship, right? Fellowship is this. Like people, we cannot handle sin, right? None of us can handle sin. It has to be destroyed. But if none of us can handle sin,
how the heck are we going to destroy it?
So that's in a sense the story of the Two Towers as they descend into that darkness. It's the idea of can evil be redeemed, right? And it's actually foreshadowed. It's really, really brilliant because in the beginning of the Two Towers film, what's the first scene? It's Gandalf
Yeah,
falling into
Balrog, yeah.
with Balrog. So it's telling you the entire
on the mountainside.
right. The story of the Two Towers is the kind of battling with your inner demons. Right? That's the idea of these Two Towers.
Okay.
Can evil be redeemed? Can the corrupted come back? Can hope and victory be found when so much bad and evil have happened? Right? That was the crux of Sam's speech at the end, right? And then we discussed this last time, where we have those two stories. The two primary characters of the Two Towers is Gollum and Theoden.
Yes.
Right? Those
and
are
like
the
the
opposite,
comparison.
right? The comparison between them.
Yeah.
Can evil, can corruption be redeemed?
Uh-huh.
And for one, it's yes, and then for the other, it's no. Right? You're just looking at me and nodding at me.
Because my brain is like, this connects with my theme.
Yes, that's great. I don't know what your theme is.
I'm aware
You told
of
it to me,
this.
but I don't remember what it is, and so I'm glad that this all connects. Which is
I'm very amused. By
thank you,
this.
Tolkien. Thank you, Professor
Woo!
Tolkien, for allowing everything to mesh and connect well. Obviously, this is
And
Peter
God.
Jackson's trilogy, but whatever that we're talking about.
Peter Jackson.
The Two Towers
used
book is
Tolkien.
actually different from the movies.
Yes.
They
Very.
end in different places.
Because Boromir's death is in Two Towers instead of in
And in the Two
Fellowship.
Towers, the book, you actually end with Sam and Frodo's
Spider's
journey
Tunnel?
at Shelob.
Yeah.
You end after Shelob. And then in
Gives you
the
more of a cliffhanger.
in volume 3 with Aragorn and the company, right? They actually end after the Palantir has been taken, right?
Yeah.
So the Two Towers in the books is Saruman and Shelob, whereas in the movies it's Mordor and Isengard. Right, and that's kind of the difference, right? Plot wise, thematically, there's also a bit of difference.
With so Fellowship is the idea of like, here is sin, here is how all of us can't handle sin in relatable character ways. Then Two Towers is like hope, crushed hope, hope, crushed hope, hope, really crushed hope. Okay, you get it back for a moment. Next movie.
Right.
So with Return of the King,
what does redeeming corruption look like? Right. What can it look like?
As like the theme for Return of the King?
As for Two Towers.
Oh.
Right? Because at the end you have Theoden, who is kind of he is uplifted. Yeah. He doesn't have his mind quite back yet. Right? Because that's what we have to see in Two Towers. He still has an arc to finish in Return of the King. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. And then Gollum is very much he got uplifted and then he
crashed and burned.
Yeah, crashed
or
and
drowned.
Burned, right?
Drowned.
It's a really sad story. Gollum's one of my favorite characters.
He's impressive.
They're all one of my favorite characters.
Right?
But
They're just these are some of my favorite characters, like ever. Like there are other characters that like come close, but the rest of the book doesn't.
Right.
It's like that one character that I'm just like in love with.
But then you go back and read it and it's another character. Or you go
With
back
Tolkien,
and watch.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I was referring to like Lord of the Rings characters are probably some of my favorite characterizations of characters ever. And so with other books, like there are other books in other series that there are characters that I love, but there aren't usually more than like one or two in the series
but we're
that
talking
like
about
come
the films,
close
and
to
so
this.
You're also saying that about the films, right? You love all these different characters.
Yes.
Yeah. So
anyway,
the central message I think of the Return of the King then, so you have that we cannot handle evil. Right, none of us can handle
darkness
evil.
And the descent into it.
And then of course Two Towers, you descend into. So you have to descend into darkness, right? And then the two sides of the coin: can evil or corruption be redeemed? What does that look like? And then the central thing of the Return of the King then is what does it look like for evil to be defeated? Right? What can actually defeat evil? Right? And in all of that, of course, the title is The Return of the King. So what does a good king look like? Right? What does, victory is not achieved in a sense. And it answers these questions, right? Victory is not achieved by ourselves.
Yes.
Right? We've already established that we can't handle it anymore. So Return of the King actually just affirms it. Victory cannot be achieved by ourselves, right? It's not, each of the fellowship members actually go through death into victory, right?
Yes.
So the thing I mentioned last time was Aragorn went through the paths of the dead.
Does Frodo actually?
Frodo dies like multiple times.
Yeah, but victory? I don't think he really experiences victory.
So his victory doesn't come until the very, very end, right?
When he chooses to
he's-
not fight for the ring and hold on to the cliff?
No, when he is sailing off to the on the Gravehaven's ship. Right?
I feel like that's more sad than victorious, though most good victories are a little bit sad.
So there
Okay.
is sadness in the sense
right.
that Frodo himself cannot find
Frodo is too traumatized
Right,
and distraught.
right. He cannot find his joy in Middle Earth, but that doesn't mean there isn't joy that's available for him.
Okay.
Right? And so and that's kind of the key that Tolkien is trying to write, I think. And of course the Peter Jackson's trilogy really does an homage to, which is this very very Catholic idea, I would say, that there are some hurts in this world that can only be healed by another world. Right? And in that way, it's in Tolkien's kind of mythology, that's why he calls it the long defeat, right? Where at the end of the day, we can't do it ourselves, but thank God for Christ who comes and saves us, right? And so it's that idea of the will. There's more than just good and evil. There's more than the will of evil, right? There's the will of good, and I'll go over that in my own theme analysis. But I think following that through thread, it's really it's still very unique today in today's storytelling, because almost all stories that we have are about how we can all achieve victory against evil through strength of arms, through ingenuity, through a lot of these human traits. And as far as I know, as far as I can remember to kind of think back on the stories that I've read, only the Lord of the Rings stands as a story that actually says, no, not really. Right? In your attempt to achieve these great things, it's almost like Thomas Sowell's unconstrained versus constrained visions. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's this idea of there are people that believe in this unconstrained version of humanity, where human nature is malleable and it can achieve a lot of great things.
Okay.
Right. But the people who believe in those things typically go towards things like communism, socialism, and all these different things, where they think as long as you can reform the systems that we have, right? If you reform it just right, then humanity will be in some kind of utopia, right?
Okay.
And then you have the constrained version, which says actually human nature is not malleable. It's nasty, brutish, and short, Thomas Hobbes. And the only kind of hope that we have is maybe iterative. Right? And so you have these two visions of the world. And typically kind of, I mean, if you were going to put it in modern day terms, like the left is on the unconstrained, right? The right is on the constrained. And these two views, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So conservatism is trying to conserve, right? A lot go back to, because I would say we on both of these. I'm not right or left, but just we believe, if we're conservative, that we cannot go beyond what immalleable human nature tells us, right? And then the other side, the left, we believe that we can, there's something, as long as we put the right people in place, as long as we put the right systems in place, humanity will be in a utopia. Right, and these two visions, most of the fictional writings that I've read go along the unconstrained, right? And Tolkien stands as, in my mind, I really can't think of anything else. As the only fantasy world that actually portrays the constrained version or vision of life.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
At some point before I die, I might also do that. But
do what?
The idea that you have, I don't know, maybe like a darkly hopeful story, rather than like a story that's extremely optimistic that just happens to have some random dark bits in it. I don't know. I just the way that you're describing the constrained and the unconstrained, it's basically you have people who don't trust people and don't really trust themselves. They're trusting like a higher power authority thing to take care of everything for them. And then you have people who are kind of like just depressed out of their mind about like, we're all not going to do well, so we might as well like protect ourselves.
Well, there's a difference between I would say there's a difference between hopeful optimism in the constrained view versus having being in despair, right? So Denethor would be a good example of someone who's in despair, who is also constrained, right? He realizes the limits of his kingdom. He realizes the limits of his humanity.
Yeah.
And he in the end he goes into despair. That was Sauron's ace in the hole. Is it ace up the sleeve? Ace in the sleeve. Ace in the hole.
Both of them?
It's ace something. But that was his ace.
Ace in the hole is the phrase, but you can have an ace up your sleeve.
Right. That's okay. Yeah. So it's both of them. so that was Sauron's ace. He had put
Slowly
such despair in Denethor's heart that it didn't actually matter if Sauron invaded Gondor. Right. He only invades Gondor because he thinks that what is it called? Pippin has the ring. Right. And so he wants to invade Gondor and then go to Rohan to get him, right? Because he thinks that he's in Rohan. And so that's the only reason. If they had not really shown that, right, the plan would have just been have the orcs show up, Denethor himself just cast away all defenses.
Yeah.
And then they have it. They have Gondor. Right? There would be no real invasion. Not really. They would burn the White Tree and everything, but there would be no real invasion.
They would just have more slaves.
But then of course, Gandalf and Pippin and the rest of our fellowship, they are the hopeful optimists in the constrained view.
Yeah.
Right? Gandalf goes, this is not the end.
Yeah.
Right? That whole speech and everything. So
yeah.
All right. I think that's a through thread that we have with all three stories. What are our themes, Rosemary? Or what's your theme that you came up with?
My main theme, which is actually kind of a personal one, but it's honoring shame.
Honor and shame?
Honoring
shame. Okay.
And this is something that I am horrible at.
Okay.
And so part of the...
What do you mean by honoring shame? Like, define those terms for us.
First of all, with shame has to do with integrity. It has to do with your internal sense of right and wrong.
Okay.
And it can be influenced by outside. So you can have... shame is supposed to be an internal thing. It's supposed to be kind of guarded and protected and managed by you. And when you allow it to be managed by other people or other people's own definitions of shame, yours ends up getting corrupted. And so it's something where, like, that doesn't mean don't follow the rules, but you need to do it because you understand that in your heart, in your mind, this is the right thing to do because you understand it's the right thing to do, not because other people are telling you it's the right thing to do.
I see. So you're defining shame in this sense as a sense of integrity, and then honoring the shame.
Honoring the shame means honoring your personal integrity, and most people abandon it, and so they push it away because
what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by abandon?
Well, it's like, okay, so for example, say
integrity. I'm guessing to mean like you are honest. You are you try to follow through with what you say or do. Things like that. Promises are promises. Yes,
it's also paying attention to yourself. It has to do with examining your behavior and your actions, so that way you are aware of when you mess up. So like for example, say you steal a donut. Okay, your sense of shame likely.
I have no desire to steal a donut, so I know
you
I'm
like
not relating.
Hate sugar. Okay, you steal. You like Pokemon. You steal a very very rare Pokemon card. That like
I have no desire for Pokemon cards. Sorry.
Okay, fine. I don't know. You have the first edition copy of The Hobbit. You have stolen a first edition copy of The Hobbit. Those suckers are worth like $1,000. Is it 500 or 1,000?
I have no idea.
Something insane, like $1,000.
I don't think I have a desire for that either. But I'll go along.
Oh my God. Okay, so $1,000 first edition signed copy of the actually signed one would be more expensive.
Anyways, keep going.
Point is, if you were to steal that from someone, or you go to like a friend's house and it's there, and you're like, and you take it. Your shame normally will have like your face will go red or your heartbeat will increase. Like there are different things where like you'll have the physical sense of shame of just like, wait a second, this is wrong, and your body will tell you that, on top of the fact that your mind's already like, dude, we know this isn't the right thing to do, like come on.
Right.
And like your heart will actually kind of start.
Well, is there a shame that can go on you that doesn't involve you having sinned?
Yes, of course. Because
so
that's other
that
people's
context?
Shame. That's okay. So, for example,
so you're saying honor your shame, but right at this point, it's you're only coming at it from you have sinned aspect, right? But what's the other side?
So okay, with movie example. Okay, so with
Lord of the Rings example.
Yes.
Okay.
With Theoden. Okay, in the Two Towers, he has already fallen prey to Saruman. He's fallen prey to Wormtongue, and when he comes back to himself, he realizes that this is wrong.
Yes.
But instead of sitting in that shame, instead of sitting there and saying like, okay, I messed up, he instantly tries to kill Wormtongue. His direct response is to attack the other things, which anger is necessary.
Pretty ugly. I would attack him.
I know,
too.
right? He's just so unattractive. Anyway, point is,
they got the perfect actor for that.
They really did.
Like Grima Wormtongue is
too.
really grimy, really oily.
They did a really
No.
Like Grima Wormtongue is a better portrayal of like greasy, slimy character than Alan Rickman's Professor Snape. Like Professor Snape isn't actually oily and greasy and weird. He's like Alan Rickman is this weird, is really, kind of attractive.
Right.
Like, yeah.
So they made him.
It was not.
They
quite...
made Snape into him rather than the other way around, right?
Yeah. Versus this one, they made this guy like I don't even remember who the actor is, but like they made this guy into Grima Wormtongue.
I don't remember who
Poor
the actor
guy.
is either.
I know, right?
I feel bad now.
Maybe everyone was just like, "You're ugly now."
Oh, no.
I've never got another actor job. Anyway, point is, he instantly lashes out.
We love you, actor of Grima Wormtongue.
I know you did a really good job, and you stabbed Saruman. Yay.
Well, that was actually a tragic happening, right?
Yeah. But anyway, point is, Theoden's first response is to lash out. He doesn't really experience that shame. So then later on, it haunts him. Like it's still haunting him in Return of the King because he's not able to sit in it. He's not able to say like, okay, like what can I do to make up for this?
In Two Towers, right? I'm actually corroborating your point.
Yeah.
In Two Towers, from that point that he's delivered up until the end of Two Towers is him reacting to what you're calling not sitting in that shame, right?
The term that I would use is obstructed shame. Again, the book that I like, Language of Emotions, guilt and shame are in there, and shame is an emotion. And like one of the signs of obstruction is crippling, repetitive, guilty feelings that do not instruct you or heal your relationships, which is kind of what he's experiencing.
He's reacting in a fight or flight.
Like he's
response.
still pushing Eowyn away, he's pushing Aragorn away, he's pushing Gandalf, like he's still pushing people away because he's letting his shame haunt him.
Right, and that's what drives them to Helm's Deep.
Yeah, where they lose so many men. So many people
well, they lost
are just
all
dead.
the elves except Legolas, right?
Do they really?
I mean, that's the portrayal
in the movie.
What they
show.
The elves don't show up in the books.
And they would have just stayed there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have run back. They wouldn't know where back is.
Yeah. Well, that's the death of Haldir. That's that very tragic happening. It's kind of, again, the elves in this story, like we talked about in the first or second podcast episode, the elves are a passing legend. Right, they're passing away.
Yeah,
and so in the Two Towers, you have this motif. Of they're going to pass away one way or the other. Right, in this way, they're passing away in death. Right, it's not their time anymore.
They're fighting for it.
Right,
they're fighting for someone else.
But at least they're fighting for someone else. At least they're fighting for the continuation of good.
Yeah,
right, all these kinds of things.
Yeah. And relationships. They're fighting for the relationship because one of the things that helps Theoden in Return of the King is the fact that like the elves, he was against everyone.
Yes.
He was against everyone because no one came to help.
I really like that change.
Yes.
Because again, Theoden goes through a slightly different character arc in the books.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of do things in cinema that is different in your adaptation than the actual source material. And so what they did was, okay, we want to show. I mean, I don't know if this is what they said in the writers' room, but the turnout was we want to show how this character progresses into darkness.
Yes.
Right, and he's not progressing into darkness the way that that Sam and Frodo are.
No.
The
or
way
Aragorn
that
or anyone else.
He's progressing into darkness in a way that he's like trying to hold up his pride. He's trying to again not sit in how did you say it?
Shame. Well, he's trying to avoid sitting in, because again, shame, healthy shame is healthy.
Right?
He's avoiding honoring his shame.
Yeah.
And so he descends into darkness, and he ends up
getting worse. It's worse than
when he starts, because of Wormtongue. He's very paranoid when he's that old man face.
Did you notice that his eyes were milky?
Yes.
Yeah. So he was blind.
That's not surprising at all. And he could only basically hear Wormtongue anyways.
Right. So
he was basically blind and deaf.
Yeah. It was. It's such a.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. One day I'll do Theoden, but
point is that he started off when we see him. He starts off paranoid. He starts off really messed up, not really listening to anyone, and then at the like halfway through the movie, he's still kind of not really listening to anyone. Like he goes back, he kind of comes out for a moment when the spell drops, and he's like, oh my gosh, and that's why Gandalf is saying like, hey, like hold your sword, is so that he can kind of have that honor and have that weight of responsibility as well, and have that kingship given back to him.
Yeah.
But then he instantly is like,
he still reacts as the old Theoden, right? There are still habits and behaviors and thought processes that he hasn't really worked through.
One of the things that I was really pissed off about when I read the book was the fact that Theoden isn't that like old face dude in the book.
Nope.
He's actually really freaking young. And it's something where, the way that young Theoden is in Two Towers is the way he is in the book. And there isn't a change in the book. There's a
It's not as
It's more
abrupt.
of an aura that's changed about him. It's not his looks.
It's not
the movies
abrupt.
did it. Yeah, the movies did it very abruptly.
So what the books
do not.
do a lot of times, again, it's just
which makes it
when
harder
you adapt,
to see. Was the point?
When you adapt from novel to film, what you have to do, like there are
You have
things
to
in
make
the
it more
novel.
visual.
Novels often drag things out because they want to show you that journey.
Yes.
Like in writing, right? You want to read through the journey, you want to experience it. But films are a different medium. Films are you want to experience it visually, right? You want and visuals are much quicker.
Yes.
Right. You take in a lot more. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
But now you have 24 frames per second, so that's 24 pictures per second, right? And so your visual, your eyes are taking in a lot more information, and so you have to, in a sense, compact. Or you'll get bored if you don't do this. But you have to, as a filmmaker, you have to compact a lot of information. And so, whereas in the books, Theoden's deliverance is much more drawn out. It's much more subtle and it's slower, right? Where in the movies, they have to kind of show it to you, right?
Yeah.
They have to show you that instant.
And they did a really good job too.
Mm-hmm.
No, they did a very, 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 very good job with
I actually
Theoden.
love both portrayals.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was upset because I was like, oh my god, that's so cool.
Well, you watched the movies first, and then right. He was like, this is not in the book.
I was upset.
He just says hi.
Pretty much. Anyway, point is, with Theoden's character, like one of the things that with shame is like you have to create like a safe space, or the way that the book talks about like a sacred space for yourself in order to like allow yourself to experience the shame, honor the shame, because it's there to protect you. It's there to help you. It's there to help you heal your relationships, heal your own heart as well. And so it's something where to respect that and to honor that in yourself. When Theoden actually does that, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't really do that until like Return of the King.
Yeah, he
honestly.
doesn't. Yeah. There is no there. So there it's at the end of Two Towers when he realizes that he wants, with Aragorn's help.
That's the start of him kind of honoring it a little bit.
Right. He realizes, I have this desire in me of attaining that greatness of my forefathers, right? Of that glory, right? Where the horse and the rider, where is the horn that was blowing? They have passed on like rain in the mountains, like wind in the meadows, right?
You can tell how much we love this.
Well, I mean, right? That line, right?
Yeah.
How did it come to this, right? He was in despair.
Yeah.
And then Aragorn helps him, and he goes, for death and glory, right? For Rohan.
Yeah.
And they ride out, and he, in that moment, he realizes true strength in that sense. And then true strength when he's helped by Aragorn, and the true strength when Gandalf with Éomer come and In the books, it's Erkenbrand, but whatever. So they come and destroy the orcs along with the horns, right? The forest and the trees.
Yes.
Right. And so he has all this help, right? And he's going through that process of it's not about me. It's not
now
about
all
me.
I have in my head is salted pork.
Oh yeah. And then he goes to Saruman's tower, and Saruman tells him what?
You are the lesser son of greater sires.
That is such an arrow in the heart.
Oh, it hurts.
Every single time I watch
and
that.
And he had started kind of, and you can see, and then again with the shame, like you can see it come up and just cripple him.
Yeah.
Like he's just sitting there. He doesn't really say anything the rest of the time.
Oh my gosh.
Like imagine someone coming up and saying like your family's trash and you're worse than them.
Mm-hmm.
Like your trash family is great compared to you.
Right.
Like
that's basically what he said.
That's basically what he says. Like he thinks Rohan is trash.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, you're the king of trash, and you're like the worst king of trash that has ever been the king of trash.
What is Rohan but a thatched barn filled with brigands, right?
Oh, and thieves.
Yeah, thieves.
Brigands and thieves.
And then you are the lesser son of greater.
And that's the thing is like instead of so when you honor your shame, you don't have to rely on other people's definitions of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do need to keep examining yourself. You do need to have people in your life that can call you out on stuff when something's wrong. Maybe not Saruman, but like you have people like Gandalf or Aragorn to like speak into your life.
I mean, Saruman's the bad side of that, right?
Yeah.
You want someone who can call you out but kind of uplift you, not like.
But also because they love you.
Right.
Like they care about you.
Yeah.
And so they're calling you out because they know that you can respect what they have to say and then move forward.
I think that's what makes, again, I mean, going back to what we were talking about with the previous episode, that's what makes Aragorn's character so fascinating. Because Theoden does see him as an older brother. Right?
I'm actually going to get to Aragorn too because he's a messed up one.
You want to go for it?
Stuff.
Go for it.
Sure. Anyway, but so with Theoden, and that's one of the other things is like, if Theoden has been looking up to Aragorn his whole life, like Aragorn is completely ruled by shame.
Okay.
Like in the movies.
In the movies.
In the books he's basically perfect, but in the movies,
the books his character development has finished by the time, and we're just seeing the outwork of that character development,
which is actually kind of cool.
It is. It's a very interesting way to write a character.
Because then it's like you're
even
missing
Gandalf
Aragorn's
goes
story.
through a character development in the books.
Yeah.
So it's
pretty
not
much just Aragorn.
Right. So a lot of people like obviously equate Gandalf with Christ and then Aragorn with Christ and then Frodo with Christ, right? They're types of Christ, right?
Yes.
But really only Aragorn in terms of character is like that.
He who is without sin.
Well, he didn't really, cast stones.
Yeah.
Is that what you're okay. All right.
No, I was just like he's
Oh, you're referring to him as without okay, all right. In the movies, it's different, right?
In the movies, so the first movie is basically like, I'm not an elf and I love you and I can't be with you because like it's wrong and.
I never took it that way.
That's kind of what it is.
I took it as him using that last excuse, right? And then Arwen's like, I don't believe you, because she knows like he doesn't even believe that, right?
Part of him believes that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to say it. I genuinely think part of him believes that.
I don't think he believes that. I think because our first kind of exposure to him as he's sitting, right, being calm, not in the corner in the dark of Bree. The
first time we see him in all of his gorgeous glory, instead of the gorgeous
and this isn't
glory.
in the theatrical versions. This is only in the extended versions, which I really appreciate. Which is why I appreciate the extended versions much more because they just expound the characters a lot better.
Worth it.
Yeah. And so what you have is Aragorn is singing of the tale of Beren and Luthien. Right?
Oh, that's grungy glory. Got it. Okay, cool. That's not in Rivendell.
Yeah. So before Rivendell, the first exposure that we
Go
have.
to sleep, Frodo. Yeah.
All right, so he's taking care of the four friends, and he's singing of the tale of Beren and Luthien, which is the tale of a mortal marrying an elf maid, right? And so his mentality is already
like a
this is gonna
reverse
happen.
Hades and Persephone. It's dope.
I guess.
It's dope.
So I think his mentality is already this is I think it's the irony in his character, and he understands this irony. His main concern is not whether he should marry an elf woman. It's more like he is so in shame of his
ancestors.
ancestors, his cultural group, his race, right? He's so ashamed of them that he doesn't think he can fulfill that destiny, despite every part of his journey being
towards that goal.
Right, towards that goal, right? His mother,
well,
him growing up in
Arwen tells
Rivendell,
him, he's like, I don't know what path to take, and she's like, it's at your feet.
Right, it's already
literally
before you.
in front of you.
Yeah. And his mother, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, the quote that Elrond gives him in that tent, right? I give hope to men, I leave none for myself.
Yeah.
That's on the tombstone of the mother. All right, so you didn't know that. So that's in the books. It's just
That's
a reference
good to
in the
know.
films. Yeah, so Aragorn's known this for his entire life, right?
Yeah.
But he has that, again, shame but my people have never succeeded.
Well, and it's been pushed on him. Like he's messed up his own internal sense of right and wrong. Because if he actually paid attention to himself and his own actions, he's marvelous. Like he not only
So they kept that part of his character, and it's really, really great.
Yeah. He's still a
he's an
good
integrous
man.
character.
Yeah, he has a lot of integrity. And like good doesn't mean that you're not tempted by evil. It doesn't mean you're not tempted by sin. It doesn't mean that like you never give in to that. It just means that at your core, you're willing to do your best to push against it, to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. And so with Aragorn and actually, I don't think anyone fully is able to embrace or honor their shame until the third movie anyways. Okay. I don't think anyone, maybe Gandalf when he does that, his descent into darkness and coming back. I think that when he comes back, his shame is significantly like I think he does honor it, because when he's Gandalf the Grey, he doesn't really honor his shame as much.
So Gandalf the White is much more able to sit in that.
Yeah.
But he's also what's really interesting. We talked about this before, where Gandalf starts at the front of the Fellowship with Frodo.
Yes.
And then as we get to Return of the King, he starts to be sidelined, despite him going into greater glory.
Yes.
Right? Which is just, again, an absolutely fascinating motif and
it's
theme.
Impressive.
Right? So, and Saruman also hits Gandalf with an arrow in the heart. Right? You sent this hobbit to his death.
Yes.
Right? And Gandalf, for a long time in The Return of the King,
thought that.
Is thinking that.
Yeah.
Right? And so up to the point where even at the victory of Minas Tirith, of the Battle of Minas Tirith and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, at the end of that, he's still thinking, right? Remember? He says, Frodo and Sam have passed beyond my sight.
Which
and
is
then
also...
he tells Aragorn, I've sent them to their death. Right? He has that despair still.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes, again, the proper king who has learned in that, like you said, like by the time he gets to Return of the King, he's learned to be able to come out of that, I'm going to say negative shame here, right?
Yeah.
Aspect. He's been able to sit in, okay, I am not going to be, I'm not going to be like the kings of old, but maybe that's a good thing.
Okay, so last time you were talking about Aragorn, and you were talking about how he goes from here's what would support me, here's what would help me, into here's what's actually in the core of your being. Let me restate it so that way you can hear it when he's talking with Theoden. Instead of, because his first thing is like think about this, and Theoden's like, F you, we're going to
I don't know
Helm's
if that
Deep.
was me.
And
it was more like this is what logically you should do. It was a moralizing kind of thing.
And so with that, it was something where then when they're in Helm's Deep and he's like, okay, ride out with me. And he's saying that, and he's talking to Theoden's heart.
Right.
Aragorn has learned how to do this, and so part of the honoring shame, like literally in the book, it talks about this, is the idea that you're not supposed to help them figure out your shame. You're supposed to help them figure out theirs. So if you want to honor shame in other people, you need to be able to say, okay, well, what do you say inside? And so when he does that with Gandalf, that's literally what he does. I just kind of had a moment of just like that's what he does with Gandalf, is like, well, what does your heart tell you? He doesn't say like, oh no, Frodo's fine. He doesn't say like, oh well, he doesn't tell him what he thinks he needs to hear. He says, okay, what does your internal strength tell you? What is where does your heart tell you that Frodo is? How does that inside of you, how is that? And that's how you honor shame in other people, is instead of forcing your own version of right and wrong or your own version of how life works, it's you ask them, and you ask them in a way that actually gets them to respond so they have an answer.
Yeah. And that friendship just develops so beautifully. And Gandalf recognizes this is the greater one. Right? And despite him not being king yet, right? Despite him not having gone through the journey into death.
He's not even king until like the very, very end. very, very end. Everything's already been won, and finally he's king.
Yeah.
And he's
great story.
It's a great story.
Great story.
It's good stuff. But yeah, so you have Theoden who refuses to honor his shame because he doesn't want to look weak in front of his people. When in reality, if he had been able to honor his shame when it came up the first time, he would have been able to maybe he would have welcomed Wormtongue, or instead of welcoming, like maybe rehabilitated or said like, hey, like, because I think Wormtongue had something happen to him. I don't remember what it was, but something happened to him, and he turned against the king like for a reason.
Well, in the films, it's just we know, like Theoden
really
says at the when he's confronting them, he's like, you know,
like, you were a man of
Wormtongue,
Rohan.
come, you were a man of Rohan, and then Saruman says that really poisonous thing, and Theoden is sitting in that at that point, and he has the realization, Wormtongue, come down, like be free of him, right? Be free of this deceiving. But
I got free of him,
right? And
I shouldn't, like, almost, not entirely, I shouldn't have sent you away, but like I probably shouldn't have sent you. And the funny thing is, if he had let Wormtongue stay, if he had worked something out with them, Wormtongue wouldn't have told Saruman about the hole in the wall at Helm's Deep.
Right. Yeah.
So like they might not have gone to Helm's Deep. They also might have won in Helm's Deep. So anyway, just the idea of like. They might have.
Well, there's a series of, and we'll talk about this later when I talk about my theme. But there's this kind of idea in the Lord of the Rings where kind of the idea of fate, right? That despite the negative things that happen despite the negative things that we perpetuate as people, yet there is a greater will that conforms it together. So the idea of Isengard being emptied, if Isengard had not been emptied, the Ents would not have been able to
sweep through
it, right? At all, right? Because then you would have a lot more fire, you would have explosions, all these people that would have probably killed the Ents, right? And so it's the idea of despite
good coming out of darkness.
Despite Theoden's darkness, there is still good that can come out of it, right? Not necessarily by strength of arms, not necessarily by the wisdom of man, but just the will of good.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, we call that God. Right?
With a capital G.
Right, so for those who are wondering, right?
Just in case you're questioning us. But
speaking of the kind of negative side, right? So we do have another theme that we want to go over, which is this idea of industry versus nature.
Yeah.
And it's a very prominent idea
throughout
in the Lord of the Rings.
Entire thing.
Right. And in all of almost Middle Earth, right?
Yeah. It starts there, it ends there, it's this whole thing.
So it's really interesting because you have the side of evil, which is all industry. And what does industry represent, right? In this world? What do you think?
Well, it represents like actual like historically it would be like the Industrial Revolution and the wars and all the things that they're doing in order to like improve the wars.
But I think there's more to it because I think in the films at the very least, I need to go back and read the books because I want to confirm this idea.
I need to too.
But there's this idea that it's not just industry like you're working, because the word industry just means work. Right? At the root of it, right?
Yeah.
But so it's not that, obviously, right?
Well, being industrious can be a good thing,
right? But
with the way that but in the theme industry works, when you think of that word got changed a century and a half ago.
In the theme of the Lord of the Rings, I think industry represents the catastrophic exploitation of nature, right?
Okay.
And we see that in Isengard, right? That is Isengard.
Well, Isengard, that's
what happens,
that's essentially like all of Isengard. But Mordor does that too.
Yes, yeah.
Sauron does that.
So Isengard is like the mini version, and then we get to Mordor, right? And we see just
the desolation,
right? As Gollum says, the pits and pits of orcs, right? Like I can't do the voice right now, but it's just those. Just pits and tortures and
no, that's not.
That was like
I'm so sorry.
That was almost Hermit the Frog there. It's okay.
No.
We'll get it one day.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll record it and put it at the end of this episode. But yeah, so industry then is the catastrophic exploitation of nature. So therefore, it is really industry versus nature.
Yeah.
Where in nature, you have this kind of
everything flows. Everything works the way that it needs to. What do you mean?
It's Treebeard, right?
Yeah.
Like everything about Treebeard
maintains it and nurtures it. And...
he's the personification of that nature.
Okay.
Right? And he's also really slow.
Very slow.
Right? Don't be hasty. We have just said good morning, and it's
Don't
nighttime.
be hasty, Master Meriadoc.
Right. And so, and you have kind of like Saruman, of course, in 2000, it's very, very prominent, right? Eventually, nature, the Ents, come over and destroy industry.
They demolish.
Right? They absolutely demolish it. And it's not by arrows and swords. It's by them just tearing out parts. And yeah, and then the flood, they break the dam, release the river, right? Release the river!
Sorry.
Keep going. There's more. Okay, all right.
That's it. That's all you get.
And so they release the river. It comes in and just washes, as Treebeard
says, clean as it
washes
can.
away. The filth of Saruman is washed away, right?
Washing away.
And so you have that idea in there. And I think this part doesn't really come as much in. It does in the books. And so when you have in the books in the second chapter, you have Frodo kind of it's either in the second. I'm pretty sure it's in the second chapter, but it's in the Return of the Shadow.
Okay.
And you hear rumors of the outside world as
the
Frodo.
Stirrings, yes.
Right. And one of the stirrings is tree men walking around in the Shire. Right.
Yes.
And then so when you get to Fangorn, right, Treebeard asks for the Entwives.
Have you seen any Entwives?
Right.
Well, I don't know. What do they look like? We don't know.
I don't remember now. That's really sad.
It's really, really sad.
Yeah, like it's.
Imagine it's just like, yeah, I'm looking for the love of my life, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. Like, do you have a picture or anything?
No, I don't remember
I can't
anymore.
remember. I know she's the love of my life,
right?
And I know that I'm looking for her,
right?
Like,
and it
hurts.
It's that idea of again industry.
I want to write that.
Right, like you have that industry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your
no, you're good.
You're sitting in your emotions right now, which is a good thing.
I'm sad.
So
just drope on the floor.
Well, don't do that.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't want to hold your microphone for you. So you have this industry and Mordor, both Mordor and Isengard, and they're corrupting the land.
Yes.
Right, and they are forcing a separation that cannot be gotten back. In a sense, right? We've lost the Entwives, right? We've lost them, and we can't even remember them anymore. I mean, we know of them, but we can't remember what they look like anymore, right? And it's just this kind of, it's a deep sadness that you can see where Tolkien kind of, and of course the movie trilogy is portraying of how, the exploitation of nature for the will of people is causing this loss.
No, I wish I knew more about C.S. Lewis, because like Tolkien based Treebeard off of C.S. Lewis, and I'm like, did C.S. Lewis forget his wife or something, or like did he? I'm curious. If...
You don't know C.S. Lewis's.
Apparently.
So C.S. Lewis was
because Galadriel's his wife
was single for a really long time, and then he married his wife. But when they were engaged, I might get the details wrong, like here and there. But I'm pretty sure it was when they were engaged, they found out she had cancer. He married her anyways. I think they had 2 years, and she died.
Ow.
Yeah. So when C.S. Lewis writes The Problem of Pain, it's like, it's really raw. I would encourage you to read it. Like, I would encourage everyone to read C.S. Lewis's Problem of Pain, because I'm pretty sure that was the book that he wrote in the midst of either in the midst or right after he had gone through that. And it's really raw because you can, especially if you know that background, you can kind of hear it as he's talking about. Pretty sure it's The Problem of Pain.
Published in 1940, it's Lewis argues that human pain, animal pain, and hell are not sufficient reasons to reject belief in a good and powerful God.
And so he is writing that after that thing. I'm pretty sure that was it.
That makes sense.
It might be another thing where it happened afterwards, but I'm not remembering the details correctly or anything. But yeah. So that's C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Treebeard is based on him. But it's that love of nature.
A grief observed?
Oh, no. Yes, that
There
was
we
the one.
go.
Sorry, not problem of pain. Yes, you're right. Grief observed.
And
there
he
it is.
refers to her in the book as H, because her name's Helen. So whenever H is referred to, he's talking about his wife.
Grief observed. Sorry, that was my fault, guys. Still read Problem of Pain, because it's a
Yeah.
really, really good book. It's Grief Observed. Yeah.
Oh, it's not even. So he wrote 4 notebooks to vent and explore his grief, and they were compiled.
Yeah.
He illustrates the everyday trials of his life without joy.
Right.
Okay, cool. Anyway, nature versus industry.
Nature versus industry.
Dude.
But I mean, that is the theme, right?
Yeah.
And that the death of the things that you love, right? And those things that you love are not industry,
Yeah.
right? It's not like, I mean, in our sense, it's not our iPhone. It's not our
iPhones can like
laptops.
help with happiness,
Right.
but they do not bring happiness.
Yeah, I mean, that was the genius of Steve Jobs, realizing that this technology is not a joy in itself, but we can use it to bring the memories and connection of people together, and kind of have that nature, that natural connection, social connection, be the forefront. Humanities, right? That's what humanities is. Be the forefront of this technology rather than us trying to serve the technology there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many people that are like, iPhones are trash. And I'm like, you're not entirely wrong, but you're not entirely
Like morally?
right either.
They say iPhones are trash morally.
No, like as actual electronic devices.
Like all electronic devices are trash.
No, as in like Android is better than iPhone.
Oh, okay.
Like those people.
No, Androids suck.
Suck. Anyway, but one of the things.
I'm just kidding. Google, please don't take this off the air.
Anyway, it's something where with nature, one of the things that pretty much every single post-apocalyptic thing shows you is the fact that nature always takes things back. Like industry will eventually fail. It always does.
Right.
It always does. And when it does, you have grass growing over cars. You have trees that are sprouting up after fires. You have all these different things that take place after brutal destruction. And so the March of the Ents is just a very fast version of that.
Yeah, that was the fast version.
That was the fast version. It's just like, all right, let's go mess some stuff up. Anyway. I'm trying so hard,
Good
guys.
save.
Anyway. But yeah, and so it's something where
yeah, and it's really interesting because that's the end of the Two Towers. Of course, also beginning of Return of the King. That's where Treebeard says the field of Saruman's washing away. But then you also get the trip with not trip, like the journey. There you go. The journey with Gollum, Sam, and Frodo, where they pass by the crossroads of destiny, and they see the head of this statue king on the floor. Right?
Is that the thing that they're sitting in? No.
No.
Okay.
So
Statue of the king.
They see a statue of the king, and the orcs have replaced the head with this really grotesque little iron cast thing, rock, right? And the head of the actual statue is on the floor. But then, and they pass by the head, and then Sam and Frodo look back, and Sam goes, "Hey, look, there's a crown on the king again," right?
Yeah.
But it's not a crown of
I
stone.
forgot about that. Yeah, it's nature.
It's a crown of nature, right? It's these flowers that have crowned the proper king.
Yeah.
Right. And so that metaphor is just strewn throughout of industry is humanities.
It can take over.
Yeah, it can take over what we see, right? Especially like in our lives.
Yeah.
In the end, though, you know, I've heard it. I've heard like industry versus nature explained this way: like man's perfection is the urban city, but God's perfection is the forest, right? And so this idea of
I wish we could just combine them together. I really genuinely
well,
wish.
that's the hope.
I know.
Right? That's
and
the
like
hope.
the elves do
That's
it.
what the elves do, right? That's what the elves do.
We can't
right?
sing to trees.
After thousands of
do
years,
stuff.
that's what the elves have learned to do.
I actually really like the idea of us being able to harness sound so we can manipulate plants. Because it's a thing. I know it's a thing. I know that you can do that.
But
there
we
are
might
science
use that
things.
in a negative and again, modern industrious way.
I
right?
know.
Which would be really destructive. Yeah.
I know.
And so that's the idea though, right? Like, but in the end, that perfection of God is going to win out. Because even though it's slower, right? it's still more sure. Right? That's why Jesus, when in one of his parables, he says the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, right? And you plant it. It's the smallest of the seeds,
Tiny little thing.
but you plant it, and eventually it grows into a tree that's greater than all the other ones, right? Or the other one where he says that like the kingdom of heaven is like yeast in a dough. You kind of like put it through all
He's
that.
like tapping his fingers in the air right now. It's kind of amusing.
It's kind of what you have to do with bread, right? But you put it in the
knead
bread.
it, though.
You knead
But
it
yeah.
into the, that's what he says. That's what Jesus says. You knead it into the dough.
Yeah, but
and
you
it
don't-
makes the entire thing rise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's not this, but
Yeah.
I have to. I can't.
It's something, yeah.
This is not. This is not really like you can't do this in midair. Like it just doesn't look right.
Yes, you can.
I mean, you can, but it just doesn't look right.
It kind of looked like knitting when you did that.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right.
Anyway,
Not that any of our listeners can see what I was doing
No.
there.
you just hear the bewildered, baffled confusedness.
Yeah, and I think that's a theme that's really a hopeful theme, a very optimistic theme. That despite the exploitation, despite the catastrophe that's happening,
Yeah.
the good nature
Will win
will
out.
win out. Yeah,
Well, and that is one of the main themes with the entire thing is that good will eventually win out. It doesn't matter how long it takes. At some point, it will.
yeah, and that actually segues directly into my theme,
Do.
right? Which is the meek will inherit the earth. Right, that's a Bible verse. It's in Matthew chapter 5, verse.
That's also
3.
a song in Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that, but I've never seen or heard of that until you just said it. But the meek will inherit the earth. It's this idea that is again replete in Tolkien's mythos, as obviously in the Lord of the Rings, but also in the rest of his writings. Right,
Yes.
this idea of the smallest person. Right, Galadriel says this. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future, right? And actually, in the films, it's done really well because the entire prologue is back-ended by this quote, or by Galadriel saying, "For the time will soon come when hobbits will shape the fortunes of all." Right, and then Bilbo, of course, like affirms kind of like the littleness of hobbits. He's like, "Hobbits in this wide world, hobbits must seem of little importance." Right, but that's the idea of these little people of very little importance. They will come to shape everything, right? The fortunes of everybody. Right? And there's a quote from Gandalf, not in this trilogy, but in the previous trilogy, that I think is really appropriate, though, and it kind of ties it through. Galadriel and Gandalf and Saruman and Elrond are in this council, but then after the council is over, Galadriel asks Gandalf, like, why the halfling? Like, why did you bring Bilbo the Hobbit? And I'm pretty sure it's not in the books. Very, very sure.
Probably not.
But it's a really great line that Peter Jackson and the team put in there that I think really illustrates this idea. Gandalf says, "I don't know, right? I don't know why I brought the halfling, or sorry, why I chose the halfling." And then he says this: Saruman believes it is only great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I've found that it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. Why Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps it is because I am afraid and he gives me courage. Right?
That is actually in the book.
That
Not
is-
the giving. I don't think the giving courage part is, but I could have sworn the little things is.
I don't
No,
think so.
actually, I don't know if
pretty sure
Gandalf's
that's
the one who
completely
says
original.
it. I don't know if it's the one who, if Gandalf's the one who says it, but I'm pretty sure that quote is in The Hobbit.
Oh, man.
The Hobbit is the only book that I've actually read like a bunch. Okay?
I don't feel like
all
it is.
4 books.
I
And
think
that's
the
the only
spirit
one.
of it is. I don't think that. I could be wrong.
Well, because I
but-
know that Thorns says something similar to that.
Right. Yeah. I think it's
Maybe
it's
that's
a different
what I'm thinking
context.
of. Anyway, but yeah. But I know I love that quote from the
I'll go
Hobbit
look at
trilogy.
it.
They did a good job with that.
Yeah.
It's
And-
very, very like cinematically obvious, so that part was irritating because they could have done it.
Oh, really? I really like the setup of it.
You liked the setup?
I-
All right. Okay, never mind.
I think I'm very unlike a lot of other people who didn't like the Hobbit trilogy. All the things that people didn't like about the Hobbit trilogy, I actually mostly preferred. But then, like, I like that it was three movies. I like
okay
that
with
they
that.
added the council in there. I like that they.
Wait, but you didn't like the big elf battle.
I didn't like the big elf
The
battle.
showy magic battle.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
All right, but that's.
But you liked that the council was in there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
love
right.
that. I like that they showed that. I think Celeborn should have been with Galadriel.
That would have been smart.
Yeah, I don't think the weird, almost romance between Galadriel and Gandalf was okay. That was really awkward for me.
It was interesting.
Like, it just.
I feel like it's like the way that
Like,
you
it
feel
makes-
towards like a goddess or something, or like a queen. Like it's not.
But the way they
like,
portrayed it was kind of
it
romantic.
was reciprocal.
So
yeah.
it makes Celeborn's line in Fellowship of the Ring really weird. Like, where is Gandalf? For I must desire to speak with him.
Oh,
Right?
no.
It makes it really weird.
Oh, I hadn't even connected that.
And so it's just I kind of try to check it out of my brain
Stop
whenever
being
I
in
watch.
love with my wife.
Right, I know.
I
It's like-
know she hot.
so
Back off, wizard.
so that was just really weird. It made Fellowship really weird for me, and that at least that part.
Maybe he's like, we can fangirl about my wife together.
No, that's just really not. That's just weird.
That'd be interesting.
Anyways, so this idea of the meek will inherit the earth, right? And you can see it in Frodo, of course. You can see it in the Hobbits. When Frodo, for example, like figures out the code is for Moria,
Friend.
right? The riddle, right?
And it's a pun.
And I mean, he's a humble
play on
guy. He's not
words.
wise. He's not super
But he can
learned,
read
but he
Elvish.
figured it out, right? The loss of Gandalf, right? So the loss of the wise forces these humble little hobbits and people
to step forward.
and make their own journey, right? And even in the end, even though Strider or Aragorn and the others helped a lot, right? They distracted Sauron. It really was Sam and Frodo's quest that saved everything.
Well, and
Right.
Merry and Pippin.
Yeah.
Because
Mary
Eowyn
kills the Mary obviously with Eowyn.
helps. Yeah.
Well, Mary was the instrumental one that allowed
I feel
Eowyn
like
to
Eowyn
chop his head off.
wouldn't have been there, or she would have died earlier if Mary hadn't been with
Right.
her.
No, that is exactly how both the books
with
and the
Pippin,
movies portray it.
Faramir would have. So they saved the two other main characters.
Yeah.
They could bond over their Hobbit times. Eowyn
Right,
and
yeah.
Faramir can be like, hey, my Hobbit's cool. My Hobbit was cool. He saved my life. Mine saved my life too.
Right. So they're both saved by hobbits.
Yeah.
So it is again the hobbits are the ones that shape the fortunes of all.
Of the future.
Right?
Yes.
Aragorn, of course, is king, but he goes through he doesn't go through the Theoden route of riding into the battle of glory, right? He doesn't go the Denethor route of being in the high tower.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't go Boromir route where he's the strong man that is the courageous fighter of all of these Gondor knights. He goes through death, right?
Yeah.
To get a ghost army to come back and
then let
win.
them go.
And then he lets them go and sacrifices. Basically, in his mind, he's sacrificing himself at the gates of at the battle of And so
Well, and he with
Mordor,
Aragorn,
the
it's
gates.
also he's there, but with Aragorn, it's also something where when he's trying to do leader things, it fails.
right. When he's trying to do quote unquote leader things.
And
right?
so
when he's being the leader,
meek, when he's being like, hey, let's figure this out. When he's doing, and one of the main lines in the book that they talk about is that Aragorn is a healer, and that
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
Faramir calls this part out of him of just like, okay, this guy's serious because he's a healer. He's not just a warrior. He's not just some guy up there telling you to do stuff.
Yeah, it's not lording over.
No,
in your
he's a
authority.
servant.
Yeah, servant.
And Aragorn
healer.
understands that. He understands that he is a servant, and it took him 3 movies
Right.
to do that.
Yeah, and that's I think
But,
one of the key aspects. Like the idea of a healer is probably not the way that we really typify, especially politically, typify doctors today. Right, of these people who are telling you what to do with your body, right?
Yeah.
But rather these people who are serving you and helping your body be the best that it can be, right?
I think the world would be at a better place if we saw them that way, because then they might actually do that.
Well,
No, they don't.
depends.
Okay,
Like, I'm not going to get into that.
I haven't right now. I'm extremely pessimistic, and like I just had like a conversation with one of my closest friends about this, and he was all like, "Yeah, no, like the hospitals and the medical industry, like all these people are out there because they're trying to help people," and I'm like, "That is BS. I don't know what you're coming from, but no, some people are.
Well, I
some
think it's
people
the
are like
idea
that, but
of-
not most.
I think it's like
Definitely not all.
again when you think of in terms of industry,
Yeah.
right? The idea of industry is kind of like lording over and having dominance over people, right? And so when we think about medical industry, right, that's kind of the way that it has grown into, right? But that doesn't mean necessarily like, you know, the doctors themselves are not trying to help people, right? I think a lot of people misunderstands and it's kind of a assumption of evil intent, whereas it's just really the fruit that is born is not necessarily positive. And so people can have really good intentions without all right, so people can have good intentions, but those good intentions does not necessarily mean that you will be able to affect things positively, right? You can have the best of intentions. A lot of political figures have the best of intentions, but they don't the things that they try to enact don't actually necessarily help the very things that they say they're trying to help, right? And so, I mean, we can get into all that, but the idea of course with Aragorn is the opposite.
Yes.
Right? He doesn't go over in Rise of Glory. He comes in the meekest form, and even
as a rider in black.
Right. even at his most powerful, he releases the power.
Yes.
Right? That's the army of the dead, right? Even at his most powerful, he releases and lets go of that power and becomes a servant healer.
Had full control of them, correct?
Yes. Well, yeah. Basically.
Yeah. And so something where like he could have just been like, nah, I'm gonna keep you around till I die.
Right, like Gimli, right? Very handy in a tight spot, these lads. Yeah. And so every character in the story, or at least every good character, right? Or I should say every character that ends up good goes through a journey of humility.
Yes.
Right? In the Lord of the Rings.
Or they die.
That's still a journey of
that's still
right.
No, they all experience it, and they either get to be victorious alive or victorious dead.
Right, yeah. So
hail the victorious dead.
Hail the victorious dead, right? And it comes into play with Tolkien's idea of the eucatastrophe, right? And so the eucatastrophe is this idea that Tolkien created, a term Tolkien created and he combined two words. It was catastrophe, obviously, which usually means disaster. But then he combined the word which is Greek. I'm pretty sure it's Greek, and it's Greek
like
for
E-U-E or E-W-E? No, that's an animal.
EU. Yeah. So EU is like a prefix for good, right? So a good catastrophe, the eucatastrophe. And
like the Yucatan Peninsula. Anyway, sorry, eucatastrophe.
Yeah, so
okay.
It's a sudden turn of events which ensures that good happens, right? That the protagonist doesn't meet some kind of terrible ending, right? A lot of people think of this as the Deus ex machina, right? But what Tolkien does with that idea is that it's not Deus ex machina as in God outside of the machine comes into the machine, right? This God lifts you out, but rather that God is already in the works of the whole thing, and is bringing about good, right? And the Lord of the Rings is kind of, you see the setup of that good for the eucatastrophe to eventually happen, and that good is most notably done through the hands of the meek, right? Through the hands of the small, right? And so as Tolkien would say, the incarnation, death, and resurrection of Christ is the greatest eucatastrophe that we've ever experienced, right? If you read the Bible, you understand how it happened, right? But to most of the other people in the world, they don't know Jewish history, right? They don't know what happened over there in that little town.
What I mean, but
right?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually okay. So while we're recording this, I am in because our church calendar for Orthodoxy is different. It's
you guys are going through the
so we have Holy Week right now, and then
Passover was last week, right?
Yeah, and so our Pascha is going to be this Saturday, Sunday, and like last night we were going through it's the 12 Passion Gospels, so it actually like walks you through like, hey, here are all the gospel passages about Christ's death, and or the 12 important ones, and it's something where
right, because you can kind of trace a lot.
But yeah, and so it talks about, and then in between that you have the Psalms and these troparians and these different little these snippets of music that are for the purpose of like helping you understand what's going on and helping you with like some of the nuances as well. And it's something where sometimes I normally don't bring people with me, but I have a friend and I brought him with me last night, and it was something where I forget sometimes that there are things that I just know that like about the history of that most people don't. Like it really wasn't like, yeah, there were a lot of people like after Christ who found out about him, but he actually wasn't even that well known when he was alive. Like he just came for the Jews. And then after that, after his death and resurrection, then it's for everybody else.
I thought you said he just came for the juice.
Yeah, like, it's a party.
What? And all right, Jews. Okay, right.
Anyway, but yeah. So that was just something where like with the catastrophe, it's like okay, what it says is like the event, a sudden turn of events at the end of a story that ensures the protagonist does not meet some terrible, impending, very plausible and probable doom. And it's something where, okay, so Christ dies. He does experience that, but he does not taste the everlasting sting of death. He removes that.
Yeah.
And so it's something where that is also part of the important part. So with Frodo and Sam and Mount Doom and everything else, is you have them. They definitely are tasting death. They're definitely not doing very well.
Basically,
they're like, we're going to die today. Anyway, and then out of that, you have that sense of like, oh my gosh, wait, we're not going to die. Like, okay, so there is hope. There is still a chance. There is still life.
The catastrophe. That happens after the U catastrophe.
I thought it was YOU, like you are the catastrophe.
No, EU catastrophe.
Yeah.
U catastrophe. And so, yeah, like it's a cascading effect, right? The U catastrophe that first happens in the Lord of the Rings is Gollum taking the ring, right, and then falling down into Mount Doom, right? And I love the explosion of the mountain. At first, makes everybody think, oh my gosh, Sam and Frodo are dead, right?
Oh, and it actually, because we were talking about was it Nature versus Industry, and you were talking about Gandalf, and we were talking about shame, and it was Gandalf thinking that like Frodo's dead. And then he goes through this, and Aragorn's like, "Hey, like, what does your heart tell you?" And he's like Frodo's alive. So this, that. So he's finally believing like Frodo's still alive, and you see the grief on his face when the mountain explodes because he knows that Frodo's there. Right. He knows that Frodo and Sam are probably both there, and he's just like, "I've killed them." Like it's the final moment.
The shock, right? And then of course,
the shock and the grief. And
as we know, he follows his heart. Right, and then he goes and flies. We have to fly over, and we have to find them. Yeah, right, and it's a really beautiful and subtle moment of. I mean, Ian McKellen's acting is just
badass.
Oh my gosh, like
he's Gandalf.
Yeah, well, it's not just Gandalf, but
he's so in character. Like one of the best things of Lord of the Rings is they're all so in character.
You can't imagine anyone else being those characters.
I know that like these are actual actors.
Right.
Okay. Hidalgo is one of my other favorite movies with Viggo Mortensen, horses and stuff. It's great, but like he's still Aragorn, and like Aragorn is him, and they're so combined in this movie, and like Gandalf and Ian McKellen are so combined in this movie that you can't unsee it. Right,
people don't know Ian McKellen from his Macbeth days, right? Because it's so old. They don't know him from all the works that he did before, but in this day and age, we know him as Gandalf. Right? And what a great
Magneto.
Role, right? Oh, yeah.
Those are like the main two.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, he's Magneto.
If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen X-Men.
If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, he's Magneto.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant...
If you have seen Lord of the Rings, he's Gandalf.
I thought you were talking to our listeners and saying, if you haven't seen X-Men, we're saying that. Okay, never mind.
No.
Total misinterpretation there.
Anyway, but
All right, so before we end this theme part, I want to read two quotes because I think they illustrate this meek will inherit the earth idea really, really well. And the first is when Pippin and Gandalf first get to Minas Tirith and they leave Denethor's throne room, and it's just this, saddest thing ever for Denethor, or for them to as characters, like realizing, oh my gosh, Denethor is in such a state of despair, right?
He's nuts.
Yeah, he's nuts, right? And they come out, and Gandalf gives this really, it is probably my favorite quote outside of the one that we've already done with Gandalf in this podcast. Okay. It's this. He says this. They refer to the tree, the white tree in the Garden of Kings. I forgot what it was called. And Pippin asks, why do they guard it, right? And Gandalf says this. They guard it because they have hope, a faint and fading hope that one day it will flower. that a king will come, and this city will be as it once was before it fell into decay. The old wisdom born out of the West was forsaken. Kings made tombs more splendid than the houses of the living, and counted the old names of their descent dearer than the names of their sons. Childless lords sat in aged halls, musing on heraldry, or in high cold towers, asking questions of the stars. And so the people of Gondor fell into ruin, and the line of kings failed. And that...
Okay, I love that. How have I not heard all of that before?
That line...
Is that in the movie, or is
yes,
that in the...
that's in the movie.
That's in the movie, and
yeah.
I missed it.
And it's just
such I remember the first part, but like, dang.
Yeah. Ooh. It's such a beautiful illustration of how decay
so
in society
parents,
happens.
pay attention to your children, please.
Right?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's again, like, it's just such an apt way to describe how society falls, right?
Yeah.
It's when we become wiser in our heads than we are on our feet in our hands, right? We no longer care for our sons, right? We care more about where we come from, right? We no longer are... We no longer even have children, right? We instead sit in our high towers of intellectualism and nobility and ask questions of the stars, which don't care about us, right? And so people fall into ruin. Right?
I think that's a very uniting factor, because it's something where, like, everyone is a little bit guilty of that. Like, you might be able to...
No, I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that. It's just
I'm saying that, like, doesn't matter what side of, like, the political spectrum, religious spectrum, what it doesn't matter where your beliefs lie. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to love. You have to figure out how to have relationships, because those are the only things that matter in this life. And when you forget that, you get super insane academics who don't want to deal with reality. You get super insane parents who have kids for the purpose of, like, you're going to carry on my legacy, not you are amazing and I want to raise you so that way I can watch you grow and have this relationship with you and have this love for you, so you're able to carry that forward. And that's I don't know, it's a underlying problem that nobody really addresses. It's like they'd rather address all the small tiny things that don't actually matter, instead of the big thing of, like, okay, what are you doing?
I think for me, when I think about it, it's a slow seduction, right? You believe that the acquisition of knowledge is power, and so you try to acquire more knowledge, right? But it's a slow seduction, right? You acquire that knowledge for the power to solve the problem that you have currently, but then it's not enough. So you try to acquire more knowledge, and soon you have this acquisition of knowledge habit rather than
practice.
Well, being there for your child, right? Being there for
actual
society, being there for a relationship with people, and it's. I love that quote. Like, whenever I'm thinking about, like, where we are kind of in the world today, that's one of the most prominent quotes that come to mind, because I'm like, yeah, that's perfect illustration.
One of the main reasons why we are where we are.
Yeah, and so, not to end on a sorry note, but yeah. Yeah, we're going to skip today our
draw from the hat.
Our draw from the hat, and then we're also going to skip our, like, what we're working on, and we're going to go directly to the Dime segment. And so both of us have prepared something.
Yeah.
Rosemary, what have you prepared for our Dime segment? Where
I have a quote.
You have a quote?
I have a quote.
Yeah. Oh, not a quote. Quote.
Quote.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I have a Hobbit cloak. I didn't bring it today, mostly because y'all can't see it. But now you know that I didn't bring it, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, point is.
Anyways.
The quote is from Return of the King, and it's Pippin and Gandalf's conversation further on, like, when the battle is you can hear Mordor, like, churning in the background. You can see it.
They're going to hit that
about
gate.
to do it.
Yeah, they're coming
in. Pippin and Gandalf are kind of sitting there, and Gandalf's kind of waiting, and Pippin's just like, And Pippin says, I didn't think it would end this way. And Gandalf's like, end? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path, and one that we all must take. The gray rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass, and then you see it. What? Gandalf, see what? White shores, and beyond, a far green country under a swift sunrise. Well, that isn't so bad. No, it isn't.
Yeah, that is, I'm pretty sure that is also in the books. Not in the same context.
In the movie?
Yeah, But
It is in the movie.
Yeah, it is in the movie.
I think it might be in the extended edition.
Oh, it might be. You're right.
I think it might just be in the extended edition.
Because
I think it weirded me out when that was one of the other things, and I was like, what? But yeah.
But it's such a great moment of the realization that Pippin has. And the thing that gives him bravery, the realization this is not the end.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's a lot of...
Because Denethor can't see past that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
He's like, this is my end, so this is the end. This is our end.
Right.
We're all going to die.
And so the noble
burn.
high steward is in despair, but the small little hobbit is able to fight. Right.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful look at, like, I think the idea of despair gets a lot of people because it's this kind of, I don't see an end here. Right. But the hope of understanding, actually, this is not the end. This is not the end. Right. There are white shores, right, beyond. There are, I forgot the rest of that quote, but obviously Gandalf is talking about heaven, right? There's a greater and better place.
White shores, silver glass,
right.
Green country.
Evergreen country under a swift sunrise. Now that you said that, I remember. And so, but it's that moment of hope that even the smallest person can change the course of the future, right? And so with that...
What have you got, Isaac?
For my quote, I'm taking a poem from J.R.R. Tolkien himself. It's from The Fellowship of the Ring, and it's half quoted in Peter Jackson's Trilogy. It's about Aragorn going from being a ragtag ranger to the King of Gondor. And I think in the books, it's either translated or written by Bilbo. And it goes like this. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king. And I chose this quote because I think it epitomizes the ideas and themes that we've been talking about in this episode. In the beginning there, it's talking about how often the things that are valuable don't always seem that way on the surface, and what looks like simple beginnings actually often have great roots that dig back before anyone saw anything or took anything of note. It's almost like it's DOA, or dead upon arrival. And I think that's kind of true with our podcast right now. We're still in the beginnings of this podcast, and we've just finished our, quote unquote first season where we looked at our personal top 10 films of all time. And just to, I guess, generalize a bit, I think a lot of people get frustrated when they start something, and certainly I get frustrated when I first start something because, it doesn't often look like anything when it just gets started. A lot of times either people don't take notice or people don't like it even, especially, I guess, in this day of social media and everything where a lot of things are measured by likes or views or whatever. If people don't take notice, it can get kind of frustrating a little bit. But just as this quote says, and as we've been talking about in this episode, it is often the small things that people don't see which cause greater things to come about. And in a biblical sense, we don't want to despise the day of small beginnings because it is often the small things that no one sees which will mean more or will become more significant to us in life, especially when we look back. And of course, I want to take a moment to appreciate the journey that we've been on. I think we've looked at a lot of great movies. Some movies both of us liked, some only one of us liked. And that was on both sides, actually. So there were some movies that I really liked that Rosemary didn't like, and some movies that Rosemary liked that I really didn't like. But all in all, it's been a fun journey, especially for me, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. And so with that, we are done with our third and last episode of The Lord of the Rings. Woo-hoo. We're really, really glad. Thank you guys for listening to us all this time. We are so thankful that we were able to get through this. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great. We've been able to watch great movies. Woo. Hopefully you guys have been able to listen to interesting commentary, if not insightful commentary.
At least entertaining commentary.
Well, we only give our 2 cents, right? Other people have a dime.
They have a dime. Whole dime. Yeah. 8 more cents than we do.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I didn't think it would end this way.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path. One that we all must take. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass. And then you see it.
What? Gandalf. See what?
White shores. And beyond. The far green country. And a swift sunrise.
That isn't so bad.